going to be looking at the iPad Pro in detail today, the Apple Pencil, seeing how it works as a second screen. We're going to be looking at how its gaming performance compares to other iPads, as well as doing a full time lapse to test the battery. Today I'd like to talk about the iPad, in particular the iPad Pro. Now, we've had this super-sized tablet in the family for some time. We've been trying it out. We've been using the Pencil, both in terms of my work with video editing, with productivity, but also in the family with a wider use in terms of games and in terms of kids' homeworks. Now, we have still been using quite happily our iPad 3. This is one of the iPads we use every day, and it still seems pretty good. You know, we have updated it to the latest iOS, and we can play games and do homework on that as well. So I was interested to see, what does the iPad Pro bring to the equation? What features, could we not live without on this device, having used it? Now, when I first came to the iPad Pro, I must admit it felt slightly ludicrous, just so big, so much screen real estate. But the family and me have all warmed to it considerably, and particularly a whole host of new features that it offers. First of all, in terms of screen size, I like this, that what you've basically got here is two iPad minis. If you put these two iPad minis on top, you can see the screen real estate is essentially the same. And because you can do a split screen feature in iOS 9, that means that you can run two apps side by side, and that's been really useful for the kids in terms of researching and then taking notes all on one screen. And having that on one space is really nice. It also means that they can do that without using our main computer, so they free up that for other uses as well. But one of the things in our family we do a lot of is gaming, so I wanted to see how did the iPad Pro compare to the other devices, the other iPads we've got. So we had a look at Skylanders Superchargers, which is a pretty high-end game and is interesting because it scales to fit the iPad that you've got. So it runs on the iPad 3, but as you can see, the visuals here in that portion of the screen aren't quite as hot. It's scaled it right back. The cell shading is still there, but this is pretty basic visuals. It also runs on our iPad mini, and again you can see the visuals there, and also on the iPad Air 2. But it's not until you get to that iPad Pro experience that you can see the comparison. You're really at a high-end console style gaming. Now, what you don't see on the screen here is obviously the extra screen real estate. So whereas on the iPad 3, iPad mini, iPad Air 2, things are looking very nice, it's not until you get to the iPad Pro that you've got that real console feel to the game. And playing on that iPad with a controller did take us to feeling like this was a console experience but on a tablet device. And actually we play a lot of Skylanders, and currently the kids go to prefer that iPad Pro experience because they can play it where they want but still have that big screen. Another nice thing of that sidebar is you're playing a game, but you can slide in a browser or some notes about how you're progressing. You can have those next to the game and then switch between them very easy without having to close the game and go off to the browser. So again, I think it adds a bit to the sort of the gameplay experience. So I think that's a tick in the box for the iPad Pro, and certainly makes sense of having that bigger screen. But of course, it's not all about gaming. If you're going to be investing in this device, you're going to want to get more out of it than just entertainment. And certainly, in my field, creating these sorts of videos, I could do that on the iPad Pro. There's an updated version of iMovie. So I tried creating a video on the iPad as well as creating a video on my desktop with Final Cut. And I have to say that the iPad performed admirably well. And in fact, I really liked that touch interface in iMovie. You can still do that multi-stream editing, you can still bring in different rendering, you can bring in different filters, but you're doing that with a touch, and that is quite instinctive. In fact, when I went back to using my desktop, I still instinctively had to sort of stop myself from touching the screen. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more of touch integrated with that desktop experience. So far it's something that Apple has steered clear of, saying that when you're at a laptop you're sort of back from the screen, but certainly the iPad Pro blurs that boundary, and I think that's no bad thing. I think the final element of this is the Apple Pencil. I'm not hugely artistic by nature, but even just trying this out, I thought I would give it a go. use the paper app, and you can quickly draw circles and do some shading. And the pencil it's pressure sensitive, but also you can use the edge of the pencil to do shading as well as a fine tip with the end. And again, you've got pressure sensitive in both elements of that interaction. And there's just something natural to picking up a pencil and creating shapes with it and drawing with it. And so in the end, as you can see, I spent a considerable time just tinkering away, getting into that artistic vein. And certainly, whether or not you are naturally artistic, working with a pencil feels very natural, and certainly got me into that artistic there. And what I quite like is it's also encouraged my kids to be more creative with the tablets, whereas previously they'll often just use tablets for entertainment, maybe for a bit of homework, but creativity, they will go to the desktop. It was nice to see them picking up the pencil and being encouraged to both create and draw in a tablet space. And there's that instinctive touch interface, what we've mentioned already, that I think just works very well. Another nice aspect of the iPad Pro is because it's got such a big screen, it works really well for using as a second screen on a desktop Mac. There's a bunch of applications that do it. Here's the one that I use, and by plugging it in, I prefer to plug it in with a cable rather than Wi-Fi. You get a really solid picture, and also you can of course drag windows from your main screen to that second screen. Now, I've tried this previously with iPad mini and a normal size iPad, and really those smaller screens don't work as well because you have to resize windows as it goes back and forth, but with the iPad Pro that worked really well. And finally, I wanted to look at the battery life of the iPad Pro compared to iPad 3, iPad mini and our iPad Air 2. So what I've done is set them up with a game running. They've all got their brightness on full, they've got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth turned on, so we can see what the sort of minimum battery life will be for these devices. And as you can see, 2 hours is quickly passed without any batteries going. As we get into the third hour, approaching the fourth hour, at the top there, that iPad 3 goes first, followed by the iPad Air, then the iPad Pro, and it's that iPad mini that lasts the longest at almost 4 hours. Now, of course, these are all running a game, they've got their brightness up full, so this is a kind of minimum battery life that we'd see from these devices. Now, of course, no device is absolutely perfect, and I think potentially the biggest downside on the iPad Pro is the price. You need to consider carefully when you're investing in this what else you could get for the money. If it's a good fit though, I think the multi-featured, multi-purpose nature of the iPad Pro could well tick enough boxes to make you feel like it's worth pulling the trigger and investing on one. I particularly like the pencil, as I've mentioned, and also the smart keyboard as well that has connectors in the front and for both data and power, so it doesn't need to be powered on its own. So again, that opens up another angle. Equally, you need to consider the price of these extras too. But we're still waiting for some of the apps to be updated to take full use of that iPad Pro massive screen real estate. Currently, some of them look a bit spaced out, slightly weird on the larger screen. The apps that have taken advantage of it work really well, but you do notice when one hasn't been updated. So there you go, that's my look at the iPad Pro and how it worked in my family. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Is this something you'll be jumping in on? Do you think this is a real gaming experience that you couldn't do without? Where does the value lie in this for you? What else would you maybe suggest as an alternative? Certainly we're still evaluating it, but in initial impressions I've been surprised how positive I've come away from this, particularly with that Apple Pencil and the creativity angle. Really enjoyed that. But for now, we'll check back later and let us know what you think.